Hello, hello, hello. We got Age 112 revised. I didn't bother with a rant for the proposed. I figured just it sounded like it wasn't actually very well finished up, so I figured I could wait till revised. We're at 2 hours left till the age ends, so happy Age 111, everybody. Hope everyone enjoyed all those weird changes in the Age of Champions. Overall, I thought it was a mostly successful age all around. Fair number of wars, some interesting stuff going on, some hits and misses. We'll talk maybe a bit about that. Probably more in the finals video. I'll probably just focus on the changes here in revised before I compare things to Age 111. So what do we got? A very ambitious start time. I wouldn't believe that to be likely. I would expect something more like the 31st based on recent ages, but who knows? And our first changes. We have a relations overhaul. When you wave people, you gain gains, attack time, WPA, TPA, minus losses, OME. That is in effect only when you're attacking someone to the point of relations. So after, 5 hits you've given unfriendly, you're getting gains. You have better things going on here. This unfriendly stuff, pretty minuscule. Maybe if you're just short of breaking someone, you can have other people hit. You gain a little bit of offense. And you'll sort of, your later attacks will sort of auto-sync with your early attacks if you're a little bit slow, something like that. But once you get to hostile, these are pretty significant. 5% OME, significant. 10% gain, significant. 12% minus losses, not crazy, but not nothing. 6% attack time, nothing crazy, but not nothing. And this WPA, TPA, I feel like the WPA doesn't do much, but the TPA is kind of significant. You can, wave someone, and then you've got a fair bonus for robbing them. And you get essentially half of those bonuses when you're lower on the meter, I guess. So even if you're both hostile, whoever's higher on the meter gets the benefits. So it's a little weird. I don't know whose brainchild this is. I don't think it's hugely impactful, but it's kind of nice. I guess it helps you re-wave the same people if you can't CF or something. I don't entirely understand it. I don't hate it. I think generally there should be more benefits to aggressor kingdoms, but I'm saying that from the position of I like waving people and trying to get war, and the buttons I give make my life really hard, so it would be nice if they were less shitty. Otherwise, anything else here? No stances! This was something I advocated to David. I think peaceful and aggressive stances could work if we had a bigger player base. But I think at any given time, there's only a couple kingdoms in range for war. And if you have a weird mismatch of who's peaceful, normal, aggressive, it can make it just that much harder to get a fair war to start. So I think stances were just a net negative for how things worked right now. Anti-camping. Meter starts to decay after 2 days. That's fine. I don't think the infinite meter thing was much of a problem, with the exception of, one land kingdom gets to landlust you forever if you give them a button, sort of thing. Whatever. UI update, whatever. Magic word removed. I think that's fair. I think they haven't figured out how magic word should work in a fair and interesting way. I think right now it's just kind of lame. I think it could be reworked rather than removed, but I think if you don't have a solution to it, removal is fine. Tornado changes. These are also changes that I suggested to David. I actually suggested, I think, 4 changes to Tornado. So this is, some of them, but not all of them. And then Nightmares, Landlust, AR, move to Hostile. War Horses, AW, Greater Arson, move to Hostile. I think that's fine. I don't think that changes much at all. Maybe it just changes Landlust. The rest I don't think matter too much. In general, doing things in Unfriendly is just shitty anyways, because you only have, like, you're using 3 mana and 3 stealth and op, so not really ideal working things that way, but whatever. Other changes, aggressive force ceasefires back. I think that's fine. Stances are gone, like I said, that's good. Provinces created in war still have a 72-hour protection, but they get no credits. I think that's fine. Honor OMEs changed to plus 2% instead of plus 1% per level. This is another thing I was suggesting. It's how it used to be, and then we did some changes, and then we never changed it back. So, it's not really a change so much as putting things back the way they're supposed to be. Explore cost factor. Land lost in combat's no longer a factor. Yeah, this affects very few people. Most people probably don't know it's even a thing. It just, it makes it easier to explore when you've lost more land. So when you end up in, like, a situation where you have these really big TMs and they're trying to explore, it's a lot harder for them compared to some attacker that's just been army in, army out all age in wars. But it did make it so you could just get really big provinces pretty easily if you've been trading land, and I think maybe that was a bit of a problem. And I think it was especially a problem for micros being able to explore easier than, like, established kingdoms, just because they're trading a lot more, ? I could have that wrong. I think that's my assumption. Mentors removed when province dies. That's kind of fine. Extra information in your history. That's kind of cool. That sort of stuff I think people like a lot more than they realize, but we'll see. And now we get to the good stuff. Races and personalities. 8 minutes in. What do we got? Avians, minus 20% attack time, which is a nerf. Yeah, when you look at quick feet. So, slower attack times, but you get that birth rate back that everybody loves. You have Town Watch, plus the birth rate's very strong. You have Reflect Magic now, is very strong, especially with high peasants. It makes Fireball and just everything a big pain in the ass. A whole kingdom with Reflect Magic's just a big pain. It's really strong for securing honor, stuff like that. You have the same changes with casualties, barracks, stables, so nothing really changed there. They have the same unique ability they used to have, except honor gains are set to 0. I don't understand why, but fair enough. Same elite and everything. I guess it's technically a slight buff with the birth rates and Reflect Magic. But they're also a little bit slower. So it's a little bit of a buff, but I read through these changes, and based on the buffs we'll see to other races and how few avians we saw this age, I'd say avians are, like, looking really weak right now. I'd put them in, like, D tier compared to every other race. I do love Reflect Magic and Speed and Birth Rates. Those are good combos together, but they just don't have the offense they'll need to break people. They're fragile with the casualties, and they don't really have a lot going for them. So, not amazing. Dark Elf. 20% WPA, that's the same. 10% OME, that's the same. Credits, that's the same. Same spells. Exploration costs, thief costs. So essentially everything's the same here with Dark Elf. They have the same 0 cost, once a day for offensive spell ability. So really I think they just lost their base rune cost. So they no longer have just 50% cheaper spells in general. However, they did gain a D-spec. So, I think depending on your play style, that might be overall a benefit. 10% defense is nothing to scoff at. And like if you're an attacker and you wait to use this for when you land lust and otherwise you're never really casting spells, your ability to be an attacker just got a lot better. Just free 10% defense. I think if you're a pure TM that's, you know, regularly casting spells, yeah, you're taking a bit of a hit on runes. So if you don't have, you know, if you're not already in a position where you make most of your runes through robbing or aid, yeah, you're taking a fair nerf there. You're going to need extra towers, or you're not going to be casting your spells. Or you need to strategize more around these 1-tick mana dumps. But that's not really how most people work. So I'd say attacking Dark Elf is a modest buff. I'd say a pure Dark Elf, you have the more defense, so that's also a buff, but I don't think it's a huge buff. So overall, I'm going to put Dark Elf in like C tier here. I just don't think they have a lot of things going for them. I mean, Mage's Fury, Invis, WPA are all strong. The 11 D-spec strong. So, you know, there is a lot to be happy with Dark Elf. But again, I think compared to the buffs we'll see from other races, they're falling behind. Maybe I'll move them up to B tier because I think they still work. But I think they're outclassed in general. Dwarf. Everyone loves a dwarf. Same building efficiency. They are taking minus 25% damage from thieves and magic ops. So that's protection from Night Strike and fireballs. Pretty good. You know, this definitely doesn't make you immune by any means. And if you do take big Night Strike runs, you're not going to notice this much. It's more for the incidental stuff that this stuff helps when it comes to like Greater Arson, Steel Horses, you know, Fireball, it's a bit more good for. But when it comes to big Night Strike runs, I haven't ever found, you know, big stacking minus damages to help much. And Night Strike's really the number one thing you're trying to avoid for an attacker. Their unique ability, for 6 days, all production buildings produce 30% more. All land is free to build. Once a day for 6 days. They no longer have restricted accelerated construction or minus 50% construction times. So when you use this, you can use accelerated construction presumably and build for free at half speed. They've lost 15% TPA, same food penalty, same D-spec, O-spec, but they do have one more offense point on their elite. So overall, I'd say this is a fairly big buff to Dwarf. Like, you don't need to use that ability very often, but when you do use it, it's going to save you a ton of money. I don't think the production buff matters much here. But, like, if you're just able to swap for war for free, that's really huge. Like, that's millions of gold. Like, that's whole dragon's worth of gold. And then on top of that, you have more strong elite, and you're resistant to Night Strike and Fireballs. I'd say Dwarf is pretty well buffed here. You lose that Earthshaker, which is a really killer buff. Like, it really makes taking down TMs a huge difference. So you do lose a really strong tool, but you gain a different tool. So I'm going to put Dwarf in, let's call it B tier again. Maybe upper B tier. I think I like Dwarves more than I like Dark Elves. They lost that Heroic Inspiration, which is a nice buff as well. So, you know, taking a couple small hits, but more offense. I like this ability. Another strong buff. I think they're looking pretty good. I played a Dwarf this age. It was awesome. We had some Dwarf Warriors. They were pretty good. Any extra offense there would be appreciated. So I'm liking Dwarf quite a bit. Elf. 40% magic effectiveness, 25% rune production, +1 mana regen. Greater protection, mist, pitfalls, wrath. +25% spell damage when under 30% mana. This is all identical to last age. Their penalties, Thieves' Dens are worse. No access to dungeons is worse, or the same. Their elite's the same. Technically, it got 1 more defense on the elite, but they got +2 to their D-spec, so from 10 to 20. So Elf just got a 20% defense buff. I think this puts them A tier easily. I think Elf is going to be an absolute monster. They're going to be completely unbreakable, and they're just going to be magic gods. I think this is just pretty obvious and easy to see. So yeah, insane elves right now. With that 12 D-spec and greater protection, that's, you know, out of control. That's just a shitload of everything, and the extra mana, the runes, everything about this is great. If you want to throw in some offense, that's fine. You have enough defense now as a pure elf that if you slip in a couple EPA, you can help finish chains, make hits. Later in the war, that might become more useful. Or you can just use it to slay dragons, because you have 50% damage on your elite versus your D-spec to killing dragons. I think elf works as a mystic, as a heretic, as a rogue. I think an elf rogue's going to hit Prince so easily. You don't really need the max Thieves' Dens, in my opinion, because really most of the work a rogue does is Night Strike anyways. So Elf, out of control, A tier for sure. It's hard to think that anything could be better than Elf, and yet here we have Fairy. Fairy versus last year, or last age, has gained 10% population and +1 strength to their elite. So 10% pop and more defense. You know, they have greater protection on a 13-point unit instead of a 12-point on the elf, so significantly more defense even than the elf. They're also getting +1 mana. They also have plus WPA and plus spell damage. So in so many ways, they're identical to the elf. They don't have the TD nerf. They have way more spells. Not only do they have way more spells, they have Fountain of Knowledge, Revelations, so they're going to scale way harder with Science. They have Mage's Fury, so their offensive WPA is actually higher than the elf. They have Invisibility and Guile, and so their ability to use Thieves is significantly higher than the elf. They're just insanely good. On top of that, you know, the super strong Mystic Vortex, out of control. You know, the only thing they've lost is self-spell duration. They can't use horses. Darn, I don't think many people are attacking with their fairies. So the only thing they're dealing with that's a new penalty that they didn't already, you know, have is this plus 30% rune cost. Look, that's rough, but I had 4 fairy mystics this age, and they've had magic ward on them since the first tick of age. So if anything, they're spending 70% less on runes than they used to, right? Like, it's not hard to find runes at 1.3 times cost. You can have artisans and dwarves and elves in your kingdom that make runes. You can rob runes. You can just have more towers because you have so much defense. And so for that, I'm putting Fairy in S tier. It is the best TM, which is just absurd to think after looking at how crazy strong Elf is. So Fairy and Elf, out of control. You know, even though I'm saying that Dark Elf was buffed, you know, then you look at these two and you say, oh, well, why would I even bother with a Dark Elf? That doesn't make sense. So if we go over to Halfling, essentially no changes to Halfling here. A 5% change here, a 5% change here. Essentially no change whatsoever to Halfling, which puts Halfling in C tier, honestly. Everything else is getting so much stronger, and the halflings are just getting nothing to compensate. Especially with such strong casters in the game, halflings are just going to be wrecked when it comes to honor. They're just not going to be able to gain or keep their honor when they're getting farmed by fairies and elves. So even though a potential max strength, even honor halfling might be comparable, once they're unbreakable, they get a lot of potential strength with that TPA buff, and the population buff starts stacking with sciences and honor, and then you're able to stack a lot higher, you know, raw TPA or WPA numbers. You can do stuff with that. I think Halfling's getting wrecked. In terms of an attacker, nothing's changed for Halfling. I think Halfling was one of the best attackers last age, a really strong hybrid, a really strong pure attacker. But again, we're seeing buffs to almost every other race, and so I'm putting Halfling in C tier. Not very good. Better than Avians, I guess. Humans! We are back to infinitely strong science humans. We have 15% science efficiency, super strong, no doubt about it. You know, we saw, what is it? Was it 25% strength on science efficiency on humans a few ages ago, and they were utterly game breaking. So we're not quite at that point with humans this time. Plus 20% honor gains in war. That's essentially worthless. Maybe some value there, but I don't think that's particularly interesting. It might help TMs, actually, but usually when there's bonus honor gains, it's actually applying only to attacks. I don't know that that's the case, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was accidentally the case. If it applies to everything, I think human TMs are looking pretty strong. You have almost as much defense as Elf and Fairy. The science efficiency goes a very long way. You don't have that WPA, and you're going to get farmed by those enemies. You're going to be very susceptible to amnesia, which sort of, you know, fucks with your whole thing. But you do have enough defense. Science efficiency, working on every category, will make you stronger at essentially everything except that WPA. You also get a bonus to training grounds, castles, barracks, and hospitals. Okay. But this unique ability is really strong. Removes all negative effects on your province. You can use it every 12 hours. That is just everything bad. Except amnesia. If it worked on amnesia, I would say humans are actually probably busted. But since amnesia is... Well, no, even then I don't think humans would be busted, but I don't think the humans have it here, and it's mostly due to how strong we'll see that the orcs are, dryads are, and even to some extent the undead are. I feel like they get countered pretty hard by elves and fairies as TMs. I feel like that they're just not quite there when it comes to attackers, because I just don't think they have the offense. But I would say if you're playing a human, your best bet is probably trying to be a pure attacker. Because you're O-spec based, you can do a lot of learning out of war without risking anything. you can play a very hard suicide attacker with very low defense, and you have Righteous Aggressor, so you can always add that defense super quick. The human here is a 12 O-spec offense, and then 12 defense elite. Super strong. Super low net worth, too, I'm pretty sure. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong there. They also have bonus, or a penalty to military wages. I think that's fine. If you were pure elite, that would be pretty expensive, but I don't think that's going to be a huge deal when it comes to other stacking benefits. So, you know, I think there's probably some pretty good attacking humans. I'll put them in B tier just because I know science can scale, but I don't think they're going to compete with other attackers we'll see here. But they do have a lot going for them. I would say if you had a full core of attacking humans, suddenly it becomes a lot harder to amnesia everyone, and they do start to gain strength. Especially because you can focus so hard on sciences. But they don't really work amazingly with Sage, since they already have Fountain of Knowledge and Revelation. You don't necessarily want to pick Sage that also double dips on those spells. And if you just have a lot more books, you are liable to be getting Learn Waved, right? So, I just think the 12-12 military isn't quite strong enough to compete. You know, maybe you can compensate by suiciding and having Righteous Aggressor to fall back on. Maybe you can compensate just by having higher defenses and maybe working something like Nightmare into your compositions to finish chains. Oh, and one thing I didn't say here is they have Tree of Gold, which just in general is crazily overpowered. Humans will just have unlimited gold. It's just not even a question. So they will be able to push WPA and Science if they want. They'll be able to run 3-day end of war ceasefires just fine. They'll come out of war with an excess of a dragon each in the entire kingdom. You could run a human kingdom probably that only does a 24-hour end of war ceasefire, comes out with 30% universities and just starts learn waving people. Like there's just a lot of benefits here to them. But in terms of that max offense, I think they're going to be a little bit behind. And why? Before we get to why, I'm just going to double check what humans had going on last age. Yeah, so I don't think anyone remembers seeing any humans last age, and it's because they suck. But if you look at new humans, you're looking at like 4 major buffs to human. So anytime you have multiple buffs to anything, you have to start thinking, is it just going to be borderline overpowered? Also, it can't ambush, which means it's going to be hard countered by our orcs. Why? Because orc has a 6-2 elite. 16-2, sorry, elite. And a penalty to ambush, losing 75% instead of 50% on an ambush. This is something we saw from undeads a few ages ago. My experience was that at the 2 of defense, it's still pretty hard to ambush them for TMs. It's doable, but it's not always trivial. So keep that in mind. But what do we have for orcs? We have 25% battle gains, minus 50% draft cost, training elites with spec credits. Now you have essentially the best elite in the world, a 16 offensive elite that you can train with credits. You're getting, and bloodlust, so you're getting about 80% more value than most people do with your credits. So you can sort of imagine that like plus 80% credits. It's actually better than that in a lot of ways. They maintain Warlord's Fury, which is mini plunders on every attack, and 25% minus offensive casualties, which reanimate at home, such that you can instantly use them again. Mostly you can just think of it as minus 25% offensive casualties. They also gained Clear Sight. They also gained 10% build efficiency and 20% credits. They gained an offense. They gained Clear Sight. So we took orcs, which I would say are already the strongest race by quite a bit in age 111, and we buffed them. We gave them a better elite, we gave them clear sight, we gave them building efficiency, we gave them extra credits, and all we did was make them lose more land on ambushes and give them less elite defense. That's not going to stop things. It doesn't even matter that their elites cost more as well. You get so many elites from your credits alone that it's really never a problem. So orcs are A tier for sure. The only thing that might keep, elves and fairy from being so broken as just giant defensive walls is that you have something like orc that can do a lot of damage. Now, fairies are gonna struggle to ambush orcs. However, I think elf, like I said earlier, with a couple elites, is gonna be able to ambush orcs that trad them. So that is something to keep in mind. But, orcs can just, war spoils you if they want. They can Anon. They can war spoils, hit a TM, and you can't do anything about it, and then they can hit other people. It's crazy. And then, you top it all off with clear sight. Yeah. A tier, top of A tier, borderline S tier for sure on orc. When you compare this orc to this human, this halfling, this dwarf, this dark elf, this avian, it doesn't even compare. It is so bonkers that you would see this much strength in a single race and so little strength on other races. So it is what it is. Next up, we have our undeads. We're back to a normal 10-10 spec undead, so no more suicide undeads, no minus science efficiency on your undeads. You have your classic minus military losses, spread plague, plague immune, no food, and converts undead that everybody loves. They also have a random 15% WPA in there for reasons no one can explain. Their unique ability gives them plus 15% kills, honor, and land against plagued targets. So this is kind of just like making you a mini orc. You get those kills like you have bloodlust, and you get the land like you have gains. Yeah, but you're still not an orc, right? So you do just have 2 less offense on your elite. You don't have bloodlust. What you do have, you have quick feet, so you're attacking faster. You have Hero's Inspiration, so you've got a little bit of gimme there. You're taking plus 25% damage from Thievery and Magic Ops. It's rough. Just build a shitload of Watchtowers. I'm going to put Undead also in A tier. At the low end of A tier, there might be a world where I have to put Orc in S tier to leave an Undead in A tier, but it's definitely also very strong. I think these Undead, if you removed Orc, would be strong enough to crush every other potential core. But does this Undead interact as strongly against Elves and Fairy? Not as much. They are lacking just a little bit on that max offense. So I think there's a little bit of question there if Undead are going to be able to make it past enemy walls. But minus 50% military losses goes a pretty long way when you don't need, you don't need farms, you don't need that many towers, you don't need that many guilds. You can sort of just push a lot of racks and TGs and watchtowers in your build and fuck shit up. So meanwhile, they also keep that extra soldier, so you get to bounce people sometimes. That's nice. And an Undead with 1 or 2 more D-specs per acre is going to absolutely crush regular core with that many military loss minuses. It's going to be really tough to crack a lot of Undead, and Undead are just going to wreak havoc on people. So Yeah, I'm keeping undead at A tier. They're crazy strong here. You do just have to watch out for that plus damage to Night Strike and Fireballs. I think you can just mostly ignore it. Build a lot of watchtowers, massacre your enemy. You have such good military stats, attack speed, and like sustain, that if you get into a massacre fight with the enemy core, you're going to utterly crush them. And so you can massacre them to the point where you're Night Striking them, and you're not getting Night Striked, and you're winning that battle somehow. So keep that in mind. They also have a bonus to military train cost. I mean, a penalty. So even their elites 900, it's actually like 1100 like the orc, but you don't get those credits. So it's going to be a little harder to max pump your undead, but not crazy hard. And worst case, you do have converts going on. So I think undead's looking pretty strong. With quick feet, you can just get a lot of speed on undead. You have a lot more build space than the orcs, so I think your best undeads probably have 20 barracks in their builds, on top of quick feet, on top of maybe haste and tactician, we'll see. So I wouldn't be surprised to be seeing 7-hour attack time undeads, and that's pretty strong. You don't necessarily need to break their TMs if you can break everything else they have as fast as these undead are going to be able to. And if you're attacking that fast, you're farming their land and honor bonus quick, it's going to be nice. And what do we have here? We have Dryad. I don't think we had a similar Dryad last age. We did have one, though. No one picked Dryad last age at all. They kind of got screwed over in the finals of last age. I think they were looking pretty strong, and whoever was doing changes pussied out at the last minute. So, what do we have for Dryad? Plus 25% military kills. That's an insane bonus. Not only is it so good when you're chaining people, that applies on your defense. So if you're just a little bit tanky, people hitting you like orcs that attack into your Dryads are going to lose a shitload of offense. So Dryads are very strong. 40% draft speed is an insane bonus. That's a better bonus than draft costs in so many ways, because you can just draft at a lower rate to sort of have the same cost per soldier, but the potential to draft 40% faster means that you can draft in like 12 hours for End of War Ceasefire. Like, I'm not even joking. You can draft so fast. They're immune to steel war horses, which is funny because I don't even think that you're building horses on Dryads. Access to greater protection. So you have a slightly buffed defense with those defensive kills, and you have a monster offense with an 18-4 elite. Just a monster offense. You have plus build costs, so that's going to be a big pain. It's going to be hard to pump out of war as Dryad and build swap. Your best bet is just to be in the builds you need to be in and use build credits in war. Not a big deal when you have this much offense. You have plus 15% attack time. That isn't great. But, attack speed's not hard to find in this game. And if you focus on a lot of stacking attack speeds, that plus 15% attack time is going to sort of disappear once you have Rax, Haste, maybe Tactician. So I wouldn't worry too much about this. And then we get this unbelievable finisher here. Wild March. You ignore all negative effects of overpopulation for the next 4 ticks. So that means when you're rioting, you don't have increased wages, you're not deserting at all, your thieves are usable, and you can attack even if overpopulated. So this means if you get chained to 300% your population, you can pop this ability, you're losing nothing. Presumably, you can either pop it early on when you're chained to make it so you're not deserting, and then when your land gets in, you won't be overpopulated. Or if you're really overpopulated, maybe you massacred people and you don't have what you need, you can activate this when you need to attack. You can hit out at 300% population, attack at normal. You're going to be able to use your thieves while you have like 12 TPA. Really busted. Really, 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 really busted. Yeah, I don't know what to think about this. These are also A tier. So we're in a world where there is, you know, interesting and strong humans that can't compete to the output of these 3 A tier attackers. And then avians and halfers that aren't even in the conversation. Dark elves and dwarves really aren't in the conversation either. And then you just have these dryads, orcs, and undeads that are going to crush people. So, yeah, a lot to look out for here. These dryads are terrifying. Your main issue with the dryads here is when you don't have these elites, you're a little bit screwed. So dryads are not going to be in a position where they can wave out of war. So like if you don't get a war with your dryads when you wave, you're bloated, you don't have elites anymore. At least not elite per acre. And now you can compensate by building your D specs instead of O specs, right? You can, and that's viable. But it also really hurts you if you want to learn wave, because you're not replacing those, and you can't say, well, I'm just going to add D-specs now. That's a little less good. So, yeah, I think the Dryad here is crazy strong with this ability. You're going to end up in situations where you're facing Dryads, and for the first 3 waves of your war, it's going to be like you did nothing. So... yeah, good luck. Not sure what to do there. But yeah, a lot of crazy strong attackers this age, and you combine that with 2 crazy strong TMs. I don't mind that. Like, I would say keep it all and just find a good way to buff, you know, those less desirable races and make everything fucking overpowered as shit. But it doesn't happen. And when you do that, something seeps through the crack is more overpowered than everything else. So, yeah. I mean, against Dryads, I think you just have to go, like, full hidden strategies and go, like, only massacres and night strikes and stuff like that and raises. And even then, you're doing all that into plus 25% kills, and it's kind of rough. Personalities. Artisans not changed, except instead of plus 20% artisan science, we have plus 15% economy science efficiency. This is an insane buff. This makes artisan very, very strong. I think economy is already, for attackers, by far the most invested science, and a plus 15% efficiency buff to that entire category is huge. This is like as good as sometimes like sages. Like, this is just a huge buff. So we have crazy good artisans here. I don't have much more to say about that. Artisan's very strong. They have some issues, but that's just a huge buff to artisan. Artisans have, you know, unlimited credits if they want. Assuming you can get yourself over 100% build efficiency, you can easily get yourself to 300% credits every time. I am also, for the 4th or 5th age in a row, 20% chance to get 50% of your credits back is just 10% of your credits back, because this is applied to every single acre you build. Because it's not applied like, you know, if I build 100 acres 5 times, it's not that one of those times I'm going to get 50 credits back. What I'm going to get is 10 credits back each time. So why the fuck is this language in here still 4 ages later? Either make it so this is actually what it does, or just change it to a 10% chance, like 10% credit refund. Like, it's just baffling to me that this is still a thing and I keep having to explain it, because you're just confusing people. Like, why is this here? Clerics. I believe clerics are unchanged from last age. This all looks the same. You have slightly better hospitals, you have salvation, you have all those things that make you take less losses, you have higher defense, you have a little extra science here. Cleric has a lot going for it, but what they don't have is the things that actually make attackers good, which is attack speed and offense. So for that, clerics fall behind for sure. Sustain is decent, but all the numbers I can run on dwarf still doesn't make the hospital builds good enough. You know, if you want plus hospital efficiency, just go artisan. You're going to have way better everything anyways, so, like, whatever. The mana savings can matter. The defense helps. You know, it's a good way to sort of hide your strength, because, you know, people don't value defense on core a lot or sustain a lot, and you have all those things, and science to scale. So it's not, you know, totally weak or discountable, but I don't think it's on par for what you really want. Divine Favor, 50% chance for double spell duration is fine. Doesn't matter a ton. The 10% rune refund is laughably retarded again. Why do you have a 10% rune refund 50% of the time? Why do you have a 5% rune refund? Like, that's the biggest non-buff ever. Like, what's the point of a 5% rune refund? Is it so when you cast Nature's Blessing 20 times, you get one cast for free? Like, what are we talking about here, guys? Heretic. I just don't like Heretic. It doesn't scale because it doesn't have a science buff. The minus Thieves' Loss just isn't that much. The extra damage doesn't really compare to an extra mana or an extra stealth. The only thing Heretics have going for them is these two spells. And frankly, neither of those spells is as good as Meteor Showers. And so, you know, whatever. You only pick Heretics if you have a Nightmare strategy. And you pick a Heretic if you really want to Fool's Gold someone, and that's it. Also, this unique ability is effectively worthless. Like, I don't know. Like, okay, I guess. It's like, if you're going to Fireball someone 10 times, you're going to remove whatever, like, 35% of their runes in gold. You could just Fireball someone 10 times and cast one Lightning Strike and one Fool's Gold, right? And, like, it's so conditional because you want to be also casting Fireballs exclusively on people that have this, but it's such a small damage amount that you would just cast Lightning or Fireball or Lightning or Fool's Gold if it was, you know, actually important that you target the runes or gold. And it just sort of makes it, you know, less good compared to, you know, Mystics and Rogues, because it's, you know, they have a worse set of, like, they have a worse kit and a worse unique. So, Mystics. Mystics is overpowered as ever. We're back to regular chastity, presumably, unless they fucked up how they did last age changes. So we're back to 50% chastity at the regular duration. 85% guild effectiveness and mind focus, meaning Mystics always have whatever WPA they want with no difficulties recovering whatsoever. And now Mystics gain plus 6 mana a day. So it's like plus 1/4 mana regeneration. I don't really understand the purpose of this, but oh well. It's a straight buff to Mystic. You know, Magic Ward got removed, which was primarily a nerf to Mystic. Now, only Mystics had it, but it was just a nerf to all Mystics. So Mystics are hugely buffed. Fairy and Elf, which are great Mystic classes, races, got buffed. And now Mystics get plus 6 more mana, so another buff there. So Mystic strong, Heretic bad. Rogues are unchanged. Rogues are going to be really good because Elf and Fairy's good, and you can run Elf Rogue and Fairy Rogue. And now you have insane WPA and honor farming from your WPA and your spells. And you can kill enemy attackers really fast with Night Strike because you're a rogue. So yeah, rogue is super strong because elf and fairy are strong. Unfortunately, halfling is so weak that you're not going to be threatened as a elf or fairy rogue, or even elf or fairy, mystic or heretic, I don't think. Again, heretic's terrible. There's no plus to your TPA or WPA. The wizard production's a joke. You have no science scaling. It's just pathetic. Anyways, rogues are good, mystics are good. Tacticians, very bare bones here. Attack time, no thief lost on intel. Valor science efficiency, which isn't great compared to tactics that you get from warrior, but it's something. Access to reflect magic is quite strong in mass. I played against a all tactics kingdom twice this age. Well, not all tactics, half tacticians kingdom this age, and it was a bit of a pain. I'll just leave it at that. So, quite strong. And now, rather than them having, I believe it was their silly massacres, raise homes and towers builds that they used to have, 30% lower wages and faster attack time. So that's just a really big buff, minus 30% wages to tacticians. It's a huge buff. We saw a lot less tacticians this age and a lot more warriors and raiders. So I think seeing a tactician buff will probably bring those numbers back. And with the strength of so many of the attackers, generally attack speed on attackers is the best way to counter other attackers. And so I think we'll see a bit more tacticians this age. Pretty good. Warriors, I believe this is all unchanged except for battle cry. I don't know how this works. I think it's probably net worth than the old ability, but maybe not. Twice a day, for 2 attacks in a row, once a day, you get plus 10% OME. It's nice. It's not amazing. It's kind of shitty. It'll be nice just for making those really special big hits you need once a day, I guess. So also there's no understanding of how this stacks or how long it lasts. If I use this 10 times without attacking, do I have 20 attacks? Or do I have 2 attacks each with plus 100% OME? Or does it just have 1 active effect at a time? Can I use this, attack once, and then 12 hours later attack again with that same OME? I think that needs to be clarified to understand it. I think if any of those are the case, it's actually pretty strong. But if it ends up just being like it only lasts for an hour, it's a lot weaker. What you're going to want to do with this, if it lasts, like it just works sort of as it says, and it doesn't stack in any meaningful way, you're going to want to calculate what you need to break the enemy TMs. You're going to want to make your core hits first, activate this ability, break an enemy TM, and then next wave with your first attack, break another enemy TM, and that way for your 2 biggest hits over 2 waves, you have plus 10% OME. So I think that's pretty strong. So I think Warrior is probably buffed with this if you can make this work properly in a good way. So that's good. Strong Warriors are nice. Pew pew. And this might be the pick for Dryads if you also want to use your elites out of war, just so you have access to converts. Raider. I believe Raider's unchanged. I had 2 Raiders. I thought they were basically worthless. But the strongest war kingdom of the age had a lot of Raiders, and the land kingdom that won the age had a lot of Raiders. So, I don't know what to say about that. They're obviously very good for the Night Strike stuff. 10% offense is a cherry on top. Tools efficiency is a very strong science to scale. So, all in all, Raider seems fine. We do, however, again, see buffs, I think, to Warrior and definitely to Tactician, so Raider might fall off a bit. But if you do have these really strong attacking races, focusing on Raider as your core as a method to add a lot of damage to the enemy might be something you look into. Maybe you go like Undead Raiders, and even though you're taking more NS damage, you're just outputting more yourself because you have that bonus TPA. It could be a thing. And last but not least, we have Sage. Sages contributing less net worth from their books is actually a really big buff. Minus 60% learn damage. That's crazy strong for sages as well. They're basically immune. But Rev not stacking with human or fairy, meh. 20% book and scientist generation, sort of meh. 15% science efficiency, pretty good, but I think Sage is just outclassed by other things. It takes too long to come online, the bonuses aren't instant in war, and nothing stops them from getting amnesia'd. So even if you have everything going for you, if you don't also have so many, WPAs, because you haven't been massacred, and you have really high raw, and you're, not running up against insanely OP fairies and elves, I don't know. I ran Elf Sage this age to try and max out some really strong WPA, and they couldn't manage the defense to avoid massacres. They couldn't manage the offense to be amazing in war. The WPA was fine, but it wasn't amazing, so I don't think Sage has it this age. So there's that. Overall, obviously imbalanced changes. You just have half the races that are significantly stronger than the other half. So they're either going to nerf the strong stuff, and that makes it boring, or they'll buff the weak stuff, but I don't really trust them to do that. I don't know if they can sort of make everything line up. So I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to nerf all the strong things, and one of them they won't nerf enough, and it'll just be overpowered, and we'll have another age where all the orcs win. But who knows? We'll see what happens. I don't mind imbalanced ages, because I think I'm better than most people at figuring that out and picking it and winning, so I'm happy there. Mechanically, I like quite a bit of the mechanics. More buffs to attackers mostly. Stances, aggressive ceasefires, all fine with me. I don't think this is so weird. But we're keeping essentially all those really weird, big sweeping changes from last age. So you're still going to have to deal with, long-lasting meter. You're going to have to deal with kingdoms getting bonuses when they grow. I think the minus 15% wages benefit from, I think, being 95,000 acres is maybe a bit strong. So you might want to look at that. But otherwise, yeah. I think if you get the balance there, I like the changes. Like, I like how strong work feels in Undead and Dryad. I don't like how much stronger Fairy and Elf are compared to Halfling and Dark Elf. Like, it's just weird. I don't like that Avian, got nerfed with honor gains and attack speed. And why? Like, Avians were almost unpicked last age. They were kind of shit. And then you literally buff Orcs, which is like what literally everyone picked, and they just crushed everything. So it's like, I don't understand sort of what's going on here. And I think this is overpowered. You probably just don't want that much of a buff on Artisan, but we'll see. Anyways, those are my rants. Coming in at just under an hour here. Thanks for listening. Before I close out, I just want to tell everyone that 5-6 are a bunch of doo-doo heads that should have withdrawn. And they cost me 2 crowns, sons of a bitches. We started this war down 600,000 units. We've closed that. They have 2 Viscounts now. And we have this giant wall of honor. Like, we've utterly crushed them after giving them a button from significantly behind. and it's only because they're petty douchebags that they didn't surrender. So, like, fuck you guys. What else do I want to shout out here? Shout out to Hidden for having, like, the shittiest age ever. Warring 2 no-name kingdoms and then getting dodged for 8 weeks. Yeah, like, really taking one for the team there. That's fucking brutal. Want to shout out to Bloody Lunatics, who, despite losing to every even half-decent kingdom they warred, including 5-6, who we crushed from behind, as mentioned, is currently honor crowning. And they're just doing this because their last 2 wars were against, like, you know, pretty low-tier kingdoms, and they just farmed the shit out of them. Shout out to Merciless for warring the, like, B squad of these 3 kingdoms that seem to be just, you know, permanently behind everyone else. And yeah, way to get those back-to-back wars against 2 different kingdoms. So you'll get your war crown. You know, if anyone, I guess you probably should have gotten honor crown out of it, but, you know, yeah, you know, I quite liked this age, but, you know, as far as the crowns are turning out, I'm not perfectly in love. We went a long time without war near the end of age. And as always, shout out to Arnold Schwarzenegger. You guys are crushing it as always. I think this might be a modern land record, ? So yeah, just a little shout out there. It's nice to see someone do so well in that regard. Anyways, I love you, Warbirds. Thanks for listening. Peace out.